Mark, welcome to Huddersfield Town.
Thank
I know you've
you
been
very
here
much.
for a couple of days already, but how have these first couple of days been?
It's been a whirlwind. It's been, yesterday was the first day. You're meeting people, you're getting to know the environment, the surroundings, and then I think around lunchtime Neil threw on the fact that we've got to complete Josh Ruffell's contract, so the agent's in the office waiting for us, go and get it done, and I think by about 10:30 last night we'd finally sorted everything out. So it was a hell of a start, but that's what you're here for. That's the stuff that we love.
That must be exciting for somebody in your position. You've not come here to do nothing, obviously.
Correct,
It's good to start on day one.
It is. Look, I mean, everybody knows Neil. Ronnie is, he's a Stoke lad. He's been around the block a fair few times, so you sort of know these people from working within the game. I think it's an exciting time to be coming here. I genuinely do. And I think there's, we've got the right people at the helm, and I think we're moving in the right directions.
That's great to hear initially. We'll talk more about Huddersfield in a moment. If we concentrate on yourself and your career to date for a minute, you obviously started as a player, a goalkeeper, I understand.
That's correct.
And you finished your career just over the Ellen bypass this year.
I did, yes, that's correct. So, long story short, started out as a young kid, went to Stoke City. I was there as an apprentice, or a YTS as it was known back then. Did my cruciate in my first year, was told I'd never play football again, but being a bit of a stubborn sod, I said no, I will play again. So I spent a long time getting back to fitness from that, did incredibly well, and then I got the chance to go to America and do a scholarship. So I had the opportunity to go to, I think it was Sunderland at the time, or go to America. And I had a youth team coach called Ricky Sprazier who ended up at Man United and other places. He said, look, go to America. And I think that gave me the skills then, not just from a sort of educational perspective as well, but also from a maturity and development perspective. I went over there, I left my family at 18, moved country, and I developed and I grew, and that gave me, I think, the footing to be able to come back. I went to Wrexham, Brighton, Shrewsbury. I did a load of little loans as well, and like you say, ended up at Halifax for a season. And I think at the end of that season, I knew it was time to call it a day. I'd had 9 knee operations, and it was just about getting to the end where it was painful to go training.
It's interesting to hear how varied your playing career was, because your career post-playing has been as varied as that.
Yeah,
you've had some time in coaching, time being an agent, and I think most people will be aware of you from your time at Stoke City.
Correct, yeah. So I think when you finish playing the game, you don't really know what you want to do, and you're trying to figure yourself out, because you're basically starting again from scratch. Most people have had 10, 15 years experience in a job, and they're climbing the ladder, and you're coming into it as a sort of a freshman again. So I think I tried a couple of things, but my passion was really, I think what happened really was, I knew I didn't want to be a manager. I didn't want to really be a coach. I coached at Livingston when they were in the Scottish Prem, just doing the goalkeepers. But I think I'd started getting players coming to me saying, you did your own contracts, what do you do, how do we do it, how do we handle it? And that sort of led me into the agency side of things, which is about pathways, it's about career building, career enhancement. And I think some of the building blocks that you do as an agent, you're building a lot of contacts around the world as well, and within the country, but you're also learning about player pathways, player development, career progression. And that, I think, is what took me into the next stage of my career, which was obviously going to Stoke as technical director.
How was that time at Stoke City for you? Because obviously it was a time where they were in the Premier League for the lion's share of that time.
No, it was amazing. There was a lot of highs. There was obviously some lows, but I think probably 90% of the time there was incredible. The Coates family were a great family. I had a great chief exec in Tony Scholes. I worked with some amazing managers, like Mark Hughes, Paul Lambert, Tony Pulis was in there. So I got to see every aspect of what a club is and how it works. And of course, it was an exciting point where they wanted to change the style of play. They wanted to change how the club was perceived. So obviously Tony left and Mark came in, and we started sort of opening the world up to Stoke City, and that was a great period of time, I think, when we did that. When we were the Stoke owner, I think we were called at one point, because we had so many Barcelona players. So that was an incredible period, but you also learn from the rough periods as well. So I think there's a huge learning curve from that that you bring away now, bring into this role, having experienced both sides of it.
There's some parallels there, I think, to our current position, the transition, the new ownership here, and even though the managers, have been here previously, it's his first full season back in charge, I should say. That must be an exciting thing for you as well.
I think it's great. I mean, obviously, Jake I knew from America. Kevin's team, are in the league. So, whilst I'd never personally dealt with Kevin, I'd dealt a lot with his staff, his manager, and his president. Heard very good things about Kevin from Jake, and I think that's very apparent in how how he comes across. Jake again, he's run the league for 10 years. That's not a small thing to do. Incredibly intelligent, articulate, and I think both of them will really help take this club forward. So for me personally, it was an incredibly exciting opportunity. You're living in Tampa, Florida, which is a beautiful part of the world. So to come back, and this is a beautiful part of the world as well. So I'm lucky in the respect that this is something that could really appeal to you, and you can, we can really make a difference. And I think if you're that type of person that likes to build things, so can we build? So at Stoke, building through the academy, bringing players through the academy, making sure the first team is better. Can it get better? If you're a builder, this is an amazing opportunity, and to do it with such good people again, because that's part of your journey, isn't it? It's trying to work with good people. I think that's what really sort of drew me into this opportunity.
We might not have Disneyland like they do in Florida, but we've got Dixon's ice cream, so that'll do in Huddersfield. Just to talk about your experience in America a little bit more, what was your role there? Obviously, you worked closely with Jake at the league, but what was your remit? So
my remit was basically to professionalise the league. Jake recognised that the league was at this real crossing point where it could go one or two ways, and I think he brought me in to educate the owners, educate the presidents, the coaches on a whole variety of things, team value management, how do you get the most value into your team? Because what you have to think is when I arrived there, the owners of the clubs would look at the profit and loss sheet and see that the players' wages were the biggest outgoing, and therefore they thought the players were the biggest liability. So we had to flip that on its head to make them realise actually the players are the best, your biggest assets. But to make them the biggest assets, you have to control the contracts correctly. You also have to develop players through an academy system. You have to be able to offer them a pathway. So it's this whole educational pathway and trip that I took them on to get them into a place where they were professionalised on the playing side. Because if you look at the clubs over there on a commercial basis, game day experience, ticketing, commercial, marketing, they were so sophisticated, and they'd all left the footballing side completely behind without realising that's the heartbeat of the club. You have to get that right to help all the other stuff. So it was trying to make sure that the footballing side was as professional as the commercial side.
To leave that behind then and come to Huddersfield Town, what was the appeal of our project and what we're looking to do here?
I think it was the relationship I had with Jake, but more knowing from what Kevin wants to do. I nearly had an opportunity quite a few years ago when the club had been promoted into the Premier League to come here and do that. So I've always been aware of the club and what it could be and what it should be. And I think it's the excitement of being able to get it back where it belongs, but doing it in a very methodical and systematical and sensible approach that means that we don't have the problems that we had last year, not just on the pitch but off the pitch as well. So it's that whole thing about, we talk about building, it's being able to build something and actually put the club back where it belongs and in a better place.
That seems really exciting, and excitement's a word that you've used. This is such a new time in our history, and such an exciting times for fans, fans as well. The things we're doing on and off the field. It must be nice for you to now be part of that, to have your feet under the table.
It is. It feels like it's been. I'm probably going back 5 or 6 years when I was last looking at potentially coming here, and then I've spent a lot of time in recently sort of looking around the areas and everything else, and that's exciting in itself. So it's the whole sort of thing for me and my family as well. It's not just me that's moved from America. It's my wife, kids, my 2 dogs. Everybody's come back. So it had to be for the right thing. You can't just leave on a whim and do all that. So I think it was 100%. It's the right thing. I think Neil is and Ronnie and his team. They're a great, steady pair of hands. They performed miracles last year to keep them in the league, and I think Kevin quite rightly made sure that Neil stayed on. So I think in terms of excitement about the role, it's there, but also you're working with a manager that's got 40 years experience. If I can't learn something from him, then there's something wrong.
There's a lot of job titles in football, and some of them make more sense than others. But sporting director is a relatively new one, especially to the public. In your own words, what is your job here? So
I think the job titles are very confusing, because I think the British press don't actually give the job the sort of respect it deserves. They're still very much stuck in this old way of the manager does everything, and but clubs are too big now. So I think you've got sporting director, technical director, director of football operation. They're all the same job. It's all about overseeing the sporting aspect of the club and making sure that whatever vision the owner and the chief exec have put in place, you're working with them to build the strategy around it and make sure it's going through. You're making sure that the first team manager has what he needs to make sure that the team is successful on the pitch. And by doing that, you've got more ability to create a flow of players coming through an academy into the B team, or however we're going to do it. So I think it's just basic. I suppose a very basic way of looking at it is you're in charge of, you're at the top of that sporting model. So you're overseeing the medical, you're overseeing the analytics, you're overseeing the recruitment. There's a whole lot to it there. I mean, some clubs are different. It depends on each club. So for me, it's I think one of the things was it was the full role.
The last thing I'll ask you, and I think one area most people will assume your role is most about, is recruitment. These things don't tend to happen overnight, even if you have made one happen overnight already. What should fans' expectations be in that area? Obviously, this will be a long-term project. Yourself, Kevin and Jake aren't here just to do something for 6 months. You want to be here for a long time and to take the club forward over a period of years.
That's right. So, I mean, I think recruitment is about due diligence, and the biggest part of recruitment is keeping the bad ones out of the building. So at the moment, the market we're in, we're having to be reactive. It's not particularly the place I'd like to be. I'd like to be able to have done plenty of due diligence, know the backgrounds, know everything on the players. So it is a longer process. Are we going to utilise my little black book and see if we can find something now that we've got the ability to have these 4 slots of, I can't remember what they're called now, but there's the unknown players that don't need to pass the GBU rules? Absolutely, we're going to try that. But we've also got to be sensible in the approach and how we do it, and not just sign people for the sake of signing people. So it is a long-term process, and I think, we've only just come in the building. Unfortunately, we're slap bang at the start or in the middle of a transfer window. So we have got to do things, and we are actively working. The recruitment team are working really hard. Neil's working really hard. I am, Ronnie, so we're all clubbing together. And I think that's how it has to work, because ultimately, I'm not, even though the club are bringing the player in, he's working with Neil. He doesn't work with me every day. So it has to be Neil's or the manager's, final decision. It has to be his choice. Otherwise, it'd never work. So, we're never going to be a position where Neil will be fighting against the signing. It will always be his decision.
Mark, that was all really interesting. You're a very busy man, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck.
Thank you very much.